All right, part two. So this is going to be looking at my friend's collection and basically showing you all how I come to the conclusion of about how much time something would take you. So again, the way to do this is to kind of gain some knowledge or some ideas of how long these games have taken people from around the internet. So you're not going to necessarily have a one go-to source. Like I said, a lot of people rely on How Long to Beat. It's a great source. It's definitely one that can help you a lot, but it's not necessarily the end all be all that's going to give you all the answers for how long something's going to take you. So I've been working on my friend Mikey's collection. Basically, what we're going to do is fill everything out. I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but I'm going to show my method for. I think I'm going to go all the C's and all the D's here just to hopefully get into a rhythm and get through it. But basically, um, once you can add up all the hour estimation that you've got there, you can divide it by the number of hours it would take you, or that you generally spend on games in a given year. So, you know, if you know that you only play 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, on average, you've got to balance out, um, you know, if you play during the weekday, the weekend, how much time you spend, all that stuff. We're really just looking for an average here, and then that will give you some idea if this is something you're interested in, beating the collection that you have, what that would look like for you in terms of time investment. So, um, if you're somebody who just wants to, jam the games that you like, play them for as long as you want, you don't have any particular goal to beat them, or every game is going to be different. Sometimes, you like to just see the credits roll. Sometimes there's going to be extra stuff you're going to want to do. Um, you know, Great example. We'll start right here. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I suppose technically you could say you've beaten this game once you get complete the castle. But of course, if you know what could happen after that, um, you could have more game to play. In fact, quite a bit of more game to play. I actually have beaten this one. I don't know that I have my file and can remember exactly how long it took me. Actually, that is one thing I could check. Is I could check on my backlog. Sometimes I do leave notes of my length. So, okay, no, I did not put that there, but that's okay. What I'm going to do then is show you all my method for how to figure out how long it will take. The other thing too for the genre, uh, just kind of, I like to make up my own genres, give me some idea of what type of game experience I'm looking in for, I'm up for. So I was doing this one earlier, the Back to the Future NES one. Arcade variety was the best way I could put it, because you're doing a bunch of different games where it's like arcadey, on rails, kind of moving through, just try and get a high score. Um, Back to the Future, the game is a like Telltale game, so choose your own narrative as opposed to like a point and click. It's not really that, it's not like a missed point and click type of games. It's a little bit different. So anyway, you come up with the determination that you think makes sense. Um, I just put the genres in because I think they're, for me, descriptive. So let's go ahead and go from here, and I'm going to show. Here it is. All right, knew we'd get there. So a few methods that we can go through. So let's go with the tried and true How Long to Beat. I think this is a great resource. Um, Definitely one of the first places I would look to get a ballpark estimate of the length of the game. So this claims that you could beat the main story 8.5, up to 15 for a completionist. Um, Interesting. I think that one of the things is in my opinion, my experience, the if you're not using a guide, which I don't use guides unless I am at an extreme level of frustration. I actually have tracked on my spreadsheet any time that I've used a guide for something, or like what moment caused that level of difficulty. I think it's interesting to record that, and try and keep track of like what moments are so kind of obscure or hard to figure out that you just had to look something up. Um, but I'm assuming this is just like a standard playthrough, like I would do playing through the game. I did not look up how to get to the second part of the game here, but I remember trying to figure it out, and that it was actually a bit difficult and obscure to do. So I spent some time just doing that. Um, I mean, it says 15 hours. I think that sounds reasonable, but let's look up. So sometimes another friend of yours could be uh, just looking at a Reddit post and seeing what people generally say. How long did it take you? Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So here's some people kind of chiming in with their feedback. I'm told 14 hours, 14 hours for 200% clear, 15 to 18 hours. And then you can also look up long plays. So this would be another added thing. Again, if you didn't know about this, secret second half of the game, you may just consider that this game is going to take you a lot less long. Here's somebody actually playing in Richter mode, which is, if you wanted to also do Richter mode after beating the game, well, you're going to spend a lot more with this time. I'm looking at this from just the perspective of completing the main first half and then getting to the secret part of the game in the second half. So 5 hours seems like crazy short to me. I mean, I think everybody's putting it in there in that range of 15-ish. I'm gonna go 15 to 20. I do like to estimate on the higher end because if you estimate on the shorter end, you could be, wildly misinforming yourself and making yourself think that something's going to be a lot easier than it actually is going to be, or something's going to take less time. So an example here is like when I played Elden Ring, I think I estimated 100 to 120 hours was my range. I put 180. Like games like that are just so big and so long, especially nowadays. If you have those filled up in your collection, that's that's 60 hours unaccounted for by my spreadsheet, and that's not an insignificant amount of time to spend on the game, in my opinion. So anyway, we will go with 15 to 20, I think, for Castlevania. I think this is an average difficulty game, and a lot of people call this a Metroidvania. I'm not going to use such specific terminology. I'm going to be more, 2D. We'll call it. Yeah, I think I'll just call it that for now. And there's no multiplayer mode to this one. All right, next we're going to look up Catherine. So there are multiple versions of Catherine. So this is one of the things you need to make sure you look up at times is, what version of this are you playing? There's like the full body version, I know, to see if your game that you're trying to estimate the time on does have a additional other versions. Is this your preferred version to play? I mean, you could figure that out for yourself if you really want, but I have my own method of doing some of that. One thing, well, I'll cover that later, but let's go ahead and look at this. So this is a 3-parter. This is a 3-hour video, almost 3 hours again. So 3, 9, 10 hours. Okay, so that's that. And actually, this is where it would have pulled up if I had looked up Catherine here. Anyways, yeah, there's a full body version. I mean, that's about the same, but I guess there's extra content. So people who played the fuller version, full body version, added like almost an extra 30 hours. 17 hours. I mean, that kind of tracks with what everybody else was saying, but this is one that seems to have some extra stuff that people would want to do. So one thing that could be helpful is to look up how many endings they have, because sometimes you may want to do multiple endings that could affect your time. 13 endings, but that's the full body version. I want to see the original. 8 possible endings. I mean, it's short enough at about, what was it, 10-ish hours, 15 hours. You may play it through a second time if you really were enjoying yourself. I think that for something like this, it looks to me like on the short end of getting through it, I think I'd put it at about another 15 hours. And I'm going to estimate maybe you do another playthrough, maybe 2, maybe you want to do some extras. I don't know. I'll go 40 at the high end. I try not to give a larger range than 25 hours. I think that's maybe I bumped this up 20. No, because I think it's a single playthrough. I do know this has some challenge to it. I'm going to put it at a 4 for difficulty. 3 is considered average, or at least I would. I know this is like a puzzle game. I don't know if it's like a puzzle platformer is what you consider. I also don't know, is Catherine multiplayer? I don't know if there's a multiplayer mode. There's an online multiplayer, and it's no longer exists, it seems. Okay. All right. So no multiplayer on this version because it's on the PS3. Yeah, I think I don't like to do larger ranges than 25 hours. I think if you're really going to spend over and above that amount of time, I think that's on you, and you just you have to figure your own way to factor that in. This is just an estimate at the end of the day, so I think we'll just leave it at that. All right, let's look up Child of Eden. So this is kind of the flow of how you start looking this stuff up and gathering this information. So this one, okay, it looks like maybe you do a second playthrough because it's almost double the time. Multi-sensory shooter. Oh, this is by the one who did Rez. I remember this one. I was a big fan of Rez, but I know it's not everybody's favorite. Okay, so let's look up a long play. I know there are multiple versions of this one too. This is a PS3. An hour. An hour to complete it. Would you want to? In a game like this, it's just like a rhythm game. You'd probably want to hang out in it and spend a little time. Okay, it's got 6 levels, 5 main game, 1 post game. I mean, if it's a good enough game, you'd probably want to play through it a few times, but it does still seem quite short. Okay, I missed that the main story was 3.5. I was focused on the 7.5. I'm gonna guess that. I mean, this seems like a decent enough game. I'm gonna go 10, and I don't think you'd spend that much more. Maybe if you were really, are you going for multiple endings? You're probably not spending that much more. And it doesn't seem like a super difficult game. I'm gonna go 10 to 15 on this one, and I'm just gonna call this a rhythm game. I think that fairly enough places the type of game it is. And let's see. So there's different pieces of information here. I don't know. I mean, are you going to play multiplayer? Is there? I don't. I mean, Rez didn't have multiplayer, so multi-sensory. No. Okay, perfect. All right, Chrono Trigger is one I know quite well, having beaten it when I was younger. It's actually one of the shorter RPGs. I think I mean, it's basically like an average RPG. I like to use TRPG for turn-based RPG, SRPG for strategy. So there is no multiplayer here. On the short end, I think I'd go like 25 hours. If you really want to explore, I mean, there's extra stuff, but there's not so much extra stuff. It's not overwhelming. I'd put 40. I don't think you'd put much more than that. And so that's my estimate. I'm going to take a quick peek at what some of these places say, just to be sure. So how long to beat is your friend? Reddit searches and general, how many endings there are. I looked up Chrono Triggers. Let's try that again. Long plays are definitely going to be your friend. And then, of course, if you want to find out other details, multiplayer, whatnot. Yes, they've got 20. I mean, I think I'm spot on there, right? 25, 40 hours for completion. I think that's a fair estimate. It is not an overly difficult game. All right, Clue Land is next for my friend Mikey. Let's see here. I don't know how you beat Clue Land. So that's another thing is sometimes you'll have a game that's like an older game which doesn't necessarily have a clear delineation of how you beat. Oh, I think I actually looked this up somewhat recently for, I don't know if that was for him or, I know there's like a certain number of stages. So when you get to the end, the other thing I like to do is check the end here and see if there's a ending screen. So it looks like you just kind of get a game over. I think it's something where you play a loop through and then you loop back through. So sometimes you want to look up, can you beat Clue Land? That's a legitimate question. Okay, interesting. Here's somebody actually doing a playthrough and they're beating it in about an hour. Okay, after beating all levels 4 times, the game starts over. Okay, so basically you go through the loop and you beat it 4 times. Makes sense. Okay. Let's see what people say here. I mean, it's probably going to be pretty challenging, I think, to get through something like that. I mean, an hour, 2 hours if you're good enough, but yeah, this is a 35-minute playthrough. I think you're going to spend a little bit longer than that. So games like this and games like shmups, especially as well, they're iterative, right? When you have an understanding of these types of games, there's something where you're going to take a specific action and you're going to iterate on it over and over again. So shmups is a little bit more novel because the stages are going to be a little bit different, maybe some enemies, but generally it's the same type of thing that you're doing. Clue Clue Land obviously is one of these types of games, so you're going to be going through iterations of these stages. I guess you have to loop through 4 times. Now I don't know. Mikey may not want to do that. He may consider one loop through done, or one loop through, and then he wants to do an additional loop just to see. This is kind of a puzzle game, but it's not really a puzzle game. It's kind of like I don't know how to put Clue Clue Land. I played this game last year called was it last year or the year prior? I played Flicky, and Flicky was similar, but I wouldn't have called that a uh, puzzle game. Um, I mean, how would you call it? I guess it's probably the best. Yeah, I think puzzle is probably the best thing. I mean, sometimes you could just look it up, see what people say, or how would they call it? Yeah, people call it a puzzle game, more or less. It's probably on the Wikipedia page. Puzzle is the genre. Interesting. Okay. So, and I think it is. Actually, I don't know if it's multiplayer. 2-player co-op. Oh, that might be a fun way to play it. So sometimes you find out that a game is co-op, which makes me at least um, want to play through together. So some of this does look like the co-op is tied with playing it in Nintendo Online, but to double check, we can do this. So this is another thing that can sometimes be helpful, is looking up the manual. So let's find a manual, find out some information about it. Controller 1, controller 2. So it looks like, yeah. The question is it co-op? I think it is. Scoring. In the 2-player game, if both bubbles get stuck together, stick out a hand and grab a turn post to separate them. So it is. You can play this game through co-op. That's actually pretty cool. That would make me want to play it even more. Now the question is how much time you're going to spend with it. So I'm going to say yes, and see. We'll do co. I think this. How did I put it on the other one? On my collection. FG for full game. So meaning you can play through the full game together. So I'm going to put it as that. Okay. It's definitely a tough game. I think if you want to get through one loop, I think that seems like something where you're going to be, like I said, when I was doing, like an example is Soldier Blade. Soldier Blade is, if you look up a long play or whatever, it's like 50 minutes. I spent like a week or two, like playing through it and learning the stages, getting through until I was finally able to get it over the line. I spent a lot more than 50 minutes. I mean, I probably spent 20 to 30 hours on that game, maybe even a touch more. I could be exaggerating, but it was a lot of tries. And I found that shoot 'em ups are like that to me. A lot of sessions is a lot of learning. Now I'm also in my like infancy of playing through. I've probably only beaten like 4 or 5 shoot 'em ups, but that's a good example there of like a type of game where you're repeating on an iteration. Flicky took me like a really long time to get through all the stages there. Like some of the later stages are really hard, and when you get to those final stages, if everything crumbles apart, and it also makes a difference too for something like this. If you're gonna use, like, save states are a more common thing. I don't use them now, but a lot of people I know do. Um, Totally legitimate, totally fine if that's how you want to play, and that would cut down significantly on the time you would spend doing these games. I still think this is pretty difficult to pin. I think it maybe at the lower end, maybe you'd spend about 10 hours. It seems about like 3-ish days, give or take, getting through. But maybe let's go 20. So it's a shorter game, but I think that's probably fair. All right, let's move on here. I'm going to try and mow through some of these. RPGs can sometimes be some of the easier ones. We got Dark Cloud actually 1 and 2 here, so they estimate 30 hours, 30 to 50. This estimates 50. Oh man, this has like a ton of extra stuff you can do in it. Okay, so let's see. There are multiple endings, 4 different endings. What about for 2? I'm going to do them kind of together. There's a secret ending. Interesting. I mean, the game's supposed to be pretty fun, but I don't know how desirable that would be. Let's find a long play here. Like I said about long plays, they're a hard thing to really factor in too much because, a lot of times these are people uploading their long plays that know the game, are kind of playing through it, kind of knowing what they're doing, knowing where to go. Not always, but often enough. So that's just 30 hours for Dark Cloud as well. You multiply this 4 hours times 11. I mean, I don't know that every one of these is 4 hours, but there's 11 of them. 8 times 4 would be 32. So you got 32, 30 hours, probably 44 hours. So I think for this one, I think it's pretty safe to say the original Dark Cloud, I put it at 35 at the long end, 50 at the short end. I think, is this an action RPG? I can't remember. Let's try and look at a little battle footage. I think this is. Looks like an action RPG. Oops. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think there's somebody in battle there. Yeah, looks like an action RPG. I'm pretty confident there's not a multiplayer aspect to either of these games. Let's look up 2. 30 hours for this person. 196 videos in this collection with 15 to 30 minutes on a video. Almost 5 hours of video on the World of Long Plays. 11 videos in total. Definitely seems like there's quite a bit more going on in this one. So you want to give yourself a range of what you're gonna be, your experience playing through is gonna be. It looks like at a minimum this is quite a longer game. Now I don't use this all the time too, but one thing you can do is go look at some reviews. I mean, generally they're pretty generic. So here's somebody specifically says they played 45 hours, 60 hours. This person played 113 hours. Goodness. Okay. I think it's fair to say at a minimum, I think 50. And then I will give a range up to 70. When there's a game that's like that level of indeterminate length, I think it's fair to just give a range of like 20-ish hours. And like I said, if you're going to be the one to take it that much further and go past the 70 hours that you've estimated, that is on you. And I think I just want to see footage because there are some series where they change the kind of genre that they are. If I remember right, I think Breath of Fire is one of those where they were kind of turn-based, and then Dragon Quarter, or maybe some other ones in the series were a little different. some of the mana games play quite differently. Okay, here we go. So it looks like dungeon adventuring. There's a enemy there, and it looks like action. Yeah, okay, pretty clear. Action RPG. Okay. All right, this should be a fun one. David Robinson's Supreme Court. So I'm going to go right to a long play, actually, because typically sports games are hard to find on How Long to Beat, because it's kind of up to you what it means to beat those games. So here's an exhibition mode. Somebody doing a playthrough and reaching an ending. Okay. So here's the cover. I love that David Robinson's wearing a Genesis jersey. I suppose the Spurs. Okay. So there's a tournament mode. Let me see. Actually, looks like you could pick through some of the options. Exhibition, tournament. Okay, so this person's going through a tournament mode, and it looks like I'm going to scroll late in the game here. Okay, and I can see up at the top here, there's kind of like some thank yous, sound effects. Okay, so you win the tournament mode. It looks like you get some credits there. So let's see. I do want to look at the manual on this one. There's one that I was doing for him that was really difficult. I think a lot of the to figure out, like I think a lot of it's not a Genesis game, not an NES game. I think a lot of these types of sports games, it's really just going to come down to you. Like I have some FIFA games, like what is it going to be? Win the World Cup? Like I have to make my own determination for that. Okay, so here's, I'm looking for game modes. Okay, this is like how to just generally control the game. Interesting. There's a role play mode where you can play pass, shoot, and steal your way to MVP, and then you challenge David Robinson to a hoop bending showdown. And there's tournament play. I don't know if that would be worth doing. That's an interesting mode. Maybe you would want to, if you win the award MVP, your team challenges the Awesome All-Stars featuring David Robinson as the center. Man, manuals give you so much more information that you would find otherwise. Let's see if there's a, is there a video of somebody going for this? Maybe that's what this was. No, I think this was tournament. Yeah, this person was going for a tournament. Okay, this is the same video. Well, they played through the tournament in like 25 minutes. I think with a sports game, I generally want to give it a decent playthrough. Yeah, this is a hard one. Nobody's on 3 backlogs on How Long to Beat. I don't really see any other videos. Exhibition mode, long play. Here's somebody who's doing some. Here's a part 1, and they did one view from 8 months ago. You come across some cool YouTubers sometimes that you never would have expected to see. So this is 8 months ago. Let's see if they did. I did David Barkley Shut Up and Champ. Okay, here's video number 2. This, I think this is their last video of it. So we'll click on here. Let's see what they did. Okay, it looks like they got the credits as well. I'm guessing they did a tournament. Okay, exhibition. Okay, they played a tournament. No, tournament. Okay. Well, it does look like they have a roleplay feature. Maybe you want to do that as well. I think when it comes to a game like this, you know, how hard is it to play through the game and beat the tournament? it might be super short. It might be long. I can't see this taking more than like 10 to 20 hours, but who knows? Maybe you love the game and you end up really, really wanting to play through it. So there was a two-player mode, right? I'm sure you can go one-on-one. Double checking the manual. Yeah, 1 versus 2. Absolutely. So that is a multiplayer experience, meaning going multiplayer 1v1 instead of playing through the full game together. All right. We're almost to the D's. I'm going to wrap up. Yeah, I'm going to go go up to Dynasty Warriors 3. So a game like this is really tricky, and you got to kind of read between the lines to figure out how much time you might spend with it. I'm going off of what I would play, and again, my friend Mikey, he may want to do more, he may want to do less. It gives him some information at the very least. Okay, I know this game has some additional content if you want to play through, so let's look up. My typing is not always ace. Okay, here's a Final Cut version, playing 25 hours, 35 hours. Okay, and what did they say here? Main plus some sides, 33 if you just power this. So this is like if you power through the game, 23, you do a little bit of sides, 33, you want it, an additional 10-ish hours to like do everything. Seems like 35 is a pretty fair estimate for this one. I don't know how difficult it is. So that's another piece of information. How difficult is Disco Elysium? Let's find out. Very easy. A bit of a chore. Is DE difficult in any sense? It's more about being okay. It's challenging. Okay. Okay. I think 35 to maybe you spend a little bit extra time with it. 50. Like I said, I like to add on additional range there. It seems average difficulty. What type of game is it, though? I actually don't know enough about this particular game. Let's see what role-playing video game. Okay. Adventure. Let me look at just a little bit of footage. This is a Final Cut version, but... Oh, yeah, a lot of like dialogue options. I don't know if it has any like leveling. A lot of reading to do. But that kind of reminds me of like old text adventures. I don't have this one on my list. It seems like an interesting one. Yeah, it looks like you're kind of picking your way through dialogue and playing through. This kind of looks like a choose your own narrative type of thing. Call it a role-playing video game. Oh, this inspired by Planescape Torment. That tells me quite a bit because that game is much more focused on dialogue and playthrough. Game is based on a tabletop RPG. Open world dialogue heavy mechanics. Okay. There's a lot of dialogue trees. I'm actually, this may not be accurate, but I'm going to call it a choose your own narrative type of game. I don't think this has a multiplayer. We're going to call it that. Oh, Disgaea. Okay. Disgaea is next. This one, I actually took this one out of my collection because it's just, I mean, like the length you could spend on the Disgaea and Disgaea games are just absurd. They're so long. 45 hours, man, this seems to me like one that if you're really going to get into and you're not just blasting through, I mean, you're going to do like 100 to 120. I think this is like on the long end. The Hour of Darkness. Let's just look up just to see, but I suspect 12 videos, 2 hours each, 2 times 12 is 24. That seems like a very short playthrough. 10-hour videos, 5 of them, 50 seems maybe more correct. I feel like you could get through the game. I'm going to go 60 for the game, and I'm going to go 80 on the long end. I think this is the type of game that, knowing Mikey, I think that he will probably play if he keeps it in a collection just to beat, and then might do some extra things. But I know there's like a ton of side stuff, and you could play this one for much longer. But this seems like a one where you do a little bit of the side, you get a feel for it, and then you beat the game again if you're gonna play through it. Put that there. I don't think it's the difficulty rating, I think, is totally subjective. So this one I know is a bit more of a difficult game, Disney's Aladdin. I'm going to give it a little bit higher rating off the jump. What version does he have here? The Super Nintendo version. So I know that the Super Nintendo and Genesis are a little bit different. Okay. 3 hours. I'm curious to see if people said they spent a lot longer. 2 hours, 30 minutes, an hour, 21. All right. Look up Aladdin on SNES. 50-minute playthrough. Let's see. So the real big question is, how difficult is it? My only gripe is that it's a bit of a short game. All right, so soldiering on here with Aladdin. Okay. So like I was saying here, somebody was complaining about it being a short game. Somebody's saying that they found it quite hard. I thought I saw a comment saying that it was actually quite easy. All right, well, let's check one more thing. Let's find out how many stages. So I haven't used the stages function too much here, but okay, so it's got 7 stages. That's actually pretty short. By platformers like this, like I think I'm gonna put this in the 10 to 15 range. You could probably even do it in 1500. You could probably even do it in 5 or less. I mean, people are playing, but you got to familiarize yourself with the stages and work your way through. So call this a 2D. Let's call it a platformer. All right. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, notorious game. All right. Well, this one has so much notorious difficulty that I think 35 minutes is. This is probably the type of game that can be maybe even cheesed a little bit. Let's just look up Dr. Jekyll. So it's this one. A couple hours. It was like a 30-minute playthrough, long play on NES. Terrible game, repeated, repetitive, difficult levels. Let's see what people actually say. How difficult is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde NES? So we'll do the Reddit search. Okay, more annoying. I kind of figured that's what the case is. Sometimes, for something like AVGN made a bunch of games very famous for their difficulty. And sometimes the difficulty is because it actually is an incredibly, there's incredibly difficult maneuvers or things to pull off. And sometimes it is literally just, it's got a bunch of janky stuff in it and you got to work your way past it. I feel like that's more this. That's it. I'll give it a little respect here. It's pretty short. We'll go 10 to 20 hours. We'll give it a little bit longer. It could take somebody a little bit longer than that even. I do want to see how many stages, if they've got that. 6 levels, but the levels differ between the Japanese and North America. Okay, so just the order differs. Okay. Yeah, that makes me, 6 levels also makes me think it's short. I'll give it the respect and put it as a 5. Is it really that difficult? I mean, it has that reputation, but it may not actually be that difficult. All right, Dr. Mario is another good one because it's like, how do you define beating Dr. Mario? Well, let's see. I would say, first of all, can you get to an end screen? I mean, it's a puzzle game. I'll give it a little respect by saying, I mean, if you're going to beat it, you're going to have to go to some harder levels. So I would think that would not necessarily be the easiest thing. So let's quickly look here on the world of long play. Here's a long, this is a 15-minute long play. So what did they do? Like when I beat Tetris, I did Tetris. Okay, so this person is just taking the virus level all the way up. Speed at high. Okay, so they're just considering beating like maxing out on everything and making the game as difficult as possible and playing through. Oh, and it does look like you get an ending if you do that. Wow, almost a quarter or like a third of this video is that. Okay, so this makes me curious how to get an ending in Dr. Mario NES. Okay, not how to win in multiplayer. Today I learned Dr. Mario has an ending. So here's somebody here. What is this a link to? So somebody posted to a video. Okay. I'm guessing that it's a similar video of that one. When is Dr. Mario for NES considered beaten? I'm currently on level 14. Okay, so yeah, it's a game where you could enjoy yourself, keep playing forever. Obviously, like I said, that does seem like that's it. You trigger the game's Final Fantasy by clearing level 20 at high speed. I mean, the way I did Tetris is I played all the way from level 0 and worked my way up to level, I think it was 10. I played at varying speeds until I worked my way up to the top, and then I beat it that way. I suppose you could, if you're good enough, you could just go straight here like this person did. I mean, here's somebody actually looks like working their way through playing for about an hour. Okay, here's a long play going level 0 to level 20, an hour and 22 minutes. I still think this is going to end up being a pretty short game. Obviously, it's puzzle. Obviously, you can multiplayer it. I'm going to say this should probably be another pretty short one. We'll go, yeah, I think 10 to 20. 10 to like kind of work your way up, get the muscle memory, build your way up to that level 20 difficulty. I would probably play through each stage just so I can and work my way up there. But if somebody wanted to just go for it and they were good enough, I suppose you could do that. All right, final two here we're going to do. I know this has been a bit long, but hopefully you guys have gotten some good information about how you can start figuring this stuff out. It is a little bit time consuming at first, but once you have the information, you've got it and you can use it, manipulate it, sometimes it helps. For me, it's made me actually sell a couple games in my collection just because I think they're too long. A game like Disgaea was in my collection, and one year I decided this is not a game I'm going to put 100 hours in. I'm just not. So, for me, it was an easy one to sell. Dragon Warrior NES, I've beaten the Game Boy Color version, Game Boy Color version. I'm going to actually ballpark this one pretty easily. I'm going to say this is a pretty short one, 20, 30 tops. It's NES. I'll give it a little respect. It's a turn-based RPG, obviously. No multiplayer. I'll look it up and see what folks say there, but let's say that that's the case. I'm pretty sure that's probably about what I ended up putting on. I mean, this person played for 2 hours. It's a little grindy. I mean, you gotta work your way up. Here's part 4, so 4 hours, maybe about 16, 15, maybe 20 is too much. It's a very small map. Okay, dragon, here it is. Okay, people saying about 10 hours, 15. There's not a lot of extras too, so giving it that 10-hour gap range, I like to do that. If there's some extras and then make the gap like 15, 20, or 25 hours, there's like a ton of extra stuff to do. Let's see what some people are saying here. I did this for 17 hours, 7 hours. I think for your first time through, you're probably going to die a few times too. I think probably I'll make the range a little shorter. I think I did overestimate this one. I'll go 15 to 20. I think this is, if you save appropriately, work your way through, I think you could do it. All right, final ones. Dynasty Warriors 3. Okay. Ooh, okay, this must have a lot of extras. 7 hours for the main story, doing a little bit of sides 24, completing at 75. Okay. Okay, 32 videos at about 3 hours, 5 hours. I mean, there's a ton of stuff in here. Looks like you play through as different characters. Oh, I see. So you play through as a single character. Gosh, there's a lot. 32? Some do appear to be a little bit longer. I wonder if they all have unique stories. I'm going to actually click on one. Battle Chiba. Okay, so they actually have names of like the battles that you fight. Okay, let's see if like pick a long one and see is it basically the same or same structure or are ones a little longer about no, these look similar. Yeah. Huh. I mean, how badly would somebody want to play through literally? Oh no, these are a little different. Yeah, some of these are quite different. Okay, so that makes me question how many, maybe how many endings or how many different playthroughs. I've never played, what are these called, Muso games? Okay, it's 3 factions. Oh, but this is in reference to a different Dynasty Warriors game. Dynasty Warriors 3. I want to go through the game with 3 characters from all 3 factions in Muso mode. Okay, so there are 3 factions. So maybe you'd want to do one from each faction. And it looks like on average it's about 3.5 hours. I would say it seems a little bit longer. It still seems like you probably want to spend a little bit of time. You're going to have some difficulties. You're going to familiarize yourself with the game. But it looks like you could play with a ton of characters. I mean, I can understand now how you can get 75 hours, 90 hours, maybe even. Oh, man. Okay. 3 factions, 3 hours each. That's like 10-ish hours, 12 hours. Yeah, I'm going to round it up. Let's go 15. Maybe you really love it and you go 40 and you don't play through every single one. I don't know how difficult this game is. Let's see what people say. This is okay. Arguably the hardest game in the series. The worst game in the series. Is this the right one? Yeah. Okay. I'll give it a 4. It looks like this one's going to give you a decent challenge. Do you just call it Muso game? How do you spell that? Action-packed hack and such. I mean, I know I was saying before, I think that I don't like using specific genre names, but I think I can only describe a Muso as Muso. So the only other question is it multiplayer? Oh, you can play co-op. Can you? Let's look at the gameplay. 2-player mode allows players to either go head-to-head in one-on-one fights or play cooperatively in any of the stages. The screen is split horizontally. So you could go up against them, or could you play through the whole game co-op? That could be fun. Let's find out. Okay, this is somebody saying, this is somebody doing an online long play together. This isn't Extreme Legends. I think that's something else entirely. Okay, well, when all else fails, let's see if we can find a manual scan. Okay, looks like we found one. Okay, so that's fine. Starting a game, loading game mode. Muso mode, 2-player available. Select an officer to play a game. Situation will change depending on which officer you use. Free mode. I think you can play this whole game with somebody. I'm surprised there's not co-op. Maybe I'll find some co-op footage. Ah, here we go. Here's somebody who did do co-op. It looks like the game might be a little shorter. Okay, split screen horizontally. Okay. I think this is a tough one. I don't know that I have enough information to say that this is full game. You could do every character. I'd have to have the game in front of me to know for sure. I'm gonna say yes, multiplayer. I don't know that it's a you could definitely play through the full game, but I'll leave it at that. So wow. It's a long process to do this kind of thing, to build this out. I enjoy looking this stuff up. I enjoy finding this information. So for me, it's a good time. I'm going to continue with this for this friend. I've had another friend ask as well to have me do this for them. So um, I think it's an enjoyable experience. Hopefully, it's not the most dull thing in the world for you all to watch, and give you some ideas of, hey, if you want to beat your games, if that's something that you are into and want to give a go, this is a good way to approach it. And what kind of things you're going to need to look up. Sometimes you look up something and one question kind of begets another, and you're kind of going down a rabbit hole. Is it long play? How, is it multiplayer? How difficult is it actually? Things like that. Um, the last thing I'll say to kind of wrap this up is it's one of those things that I find interesting about gaming that's so different, obviously, from, you pick up a book, you may read slower or faster than somebody else, but you see the length. You see it right there. A movie, a show, you can add up the time in it. You can get an idea of how long it's going to take you. Games are just not that way, and there's so much variety in the experience that a person can have. But I do wish that developers were more transparent about how long they expect you as a player to potentially take. I wish they would do this kind of thing where they would give you a range and say, hey, I think my game would take X hours for this type of player. Maybe X hours, this has a bunch of extra stuff for people who really want to deep dive. It would be helpful. It would be useful. All that we have at this point is the ability to just do a little searching, try and find the best information that you can, put together an estimate for the length of the games, and go from there. So hopefully I've given you some good insight into that. Again, if you've watched this whole way through, I really want to say thank you for doing so, and take care. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Take care.